Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as ever, I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 5 blog 17, or in legacy numbers, blog number 225, and it's dated the 14th of June 2026. And not a great week for me, but we're going to keep this light. That's for definite. Weather-wise, the last 2 days have been pretty good, and the rest of the week bloody awful. Can't do anything outside. Rain, wind, we've had everything a little bit. Basically I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible by being as, compact as possibly that I can. So we'll get the date stamp out the way, shall we, before we move into anything else. And the first thing up is the news, and I haven't been watching too much news. I've had to go to the doctors, and there's been things going on and all of that sort of stuff. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So there's probably some very important news that I've missed, but these were the ones I wrote down during the week, and then sort of like refreshed myself this morning. So the top one was someone called John Heatley. Now, he was the Defence Secretary in the Labour government, but he's resigned, and that's a big blow to Keir Starmer, who's under a lot of pressure, as you know, after the sort of like local elections that we had, where Labour got a real pounding, and rightly so. I will say that as an opinion on that. In regards to the Defence Secretary, I believe it was over money. He believes that the government's charter states that protecting our country is incredibly important. Keir Starmer says that he's released more money than any other government before it during a time where money is tight. Apparently it wasn't enough, and John Heatley resigned. Now, the weird thing about it was you then have a new person that's assigned, and that person says and vows that the country will be protected and that money will be available. Well, I don't think appointing a new person is going to change how much money you're going to get. So he's going to be under the same pressures as the previous one. So what he can do when it's all about money, which is out of his control, I don't know. See what I mean? It's just weird. Next news item was that the doctor's strike, which was planned, has been called off. And apparently it's been called off because they're contemplating and feel positive about the new government pay offer. Now, the pay offer for doctors has been going on for many, many different governments and over different times. The Conservatives will turn round and say that every time that an offer was made, the trade unions under the Labour side dismiss them. Labour come in and pay offers are offered, and they're still not accepted, and yet they are helping under the trade unions. So, it's a really weird thing that I don't really understand too much about. So I have no opinion on it other than great. No striking of the doctors. Maybe we can get some of this backlog done now. Doubtful. The other government thing is there's been pushbacks made over this social media charter that's come in. This is a under 16 charter where we're trying to reduce time that our children and early teens are using their phones, and especially across social media. I don't know what the pushbacks are, so I really don't have an opinion. I do wish our children well, and any tools great for them. But this is school control for that, home control under the mums and dads. So, hopefully all of this charter stuff has some type of an effect. I'm sick of seeing, this is what really annoys me, is people looking at their phone while pushing prams and things. Really is annoying. You should be concentrating on where you're walking, all of that sort of stuff. That's not going to help under 16s, is it? So that's why there's really nothing there for it. Now, the next thing is all sport, because I don't know if anybody knows. Well, hopefully everybody does. But one of the biggest sporting events that you could ever have is the World Cup. That's because it affects the world. And it happens every 4 years. It's done under FIFA, and it's done in different countries. And this time it's the Americas. Now, I say the Americas because basically it's Mexico, USA, and Canada. So I haven't seen this before, or maybe I have and I've forgotten, but on Wednesday there was an opening ceremony, and I watched a little bit of it, and I thought, same as every other one, no really big spectacular like I saw in the 70s and 80s. Saw things like jetpacks coming into stadiums and all sorts of stuff. It was entertaining though, but that was Wednesday. But then there was another one on Thursday, and there was another one on Saturday. And that's because the opening ceremony was in all three of those Americas, so we had Mexico, and we had Canada, and we had America. So, 3 different opening ceremonies, and all of them just had major music artists and dancing going on and all of that sort of stuff. And I really don't have an opinion on it, other than in the news before the World Cup started, there was big hoo-has over the cost of tickets. And this is where I go, why is it so bloody expensive? Why? It must be greed. It's all greed. If you lower the price, you get more bodies in. If you higher the price, you get, I believe, less bodies in, or people that have got that sort of money. And so you've got a specific type of fan that's going. Now, we're a very, Scotland, England, and Ireland, all of that sort of stuff, have got a very heavy following for our team. And we've got to pay for tickets to get to America. Not bloody cheap. Then there's the accommodation, and then there's the travelling, etc. And then you've got the tickets. And, if you lower the tickets, you make it, better for us. And you get more bodies in. Now, I looked at the opening ceremony, and I did see, it seemed like empty seats. So did when they make the prices, consider the fact that it would be better to fill the stadium than it is to hire the price and have empty seats? What's the percentage of empty seats to filled seats? If you'd have kept it at a certain price, would you therefore have, at a lower price, got that money at the same value as you had when you hired the price and made it impossible? And remember that before the World Cup, these prices were there, and so tourism must be down. You've got to remember that not only is the World Cup going to be there for those football matches, but there's also going to be the effect on tourism. If I was a big fan and I totaled it all up and I found it cost $2,000, $3,000 for the time that I'm going to be over there, and if the prices were cheaper, it lowered it to $1,500 or just $1,000, then you're going to get more bodies wanting to go. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this World Cup so far, based on that, but it's probably something that's been around even for all the other World Cups. We'll get on to some good news now. I'm a big fan of anything to do with the UK, so Scotland, Ireland, England. I want them to do well. And Scotland haven't been to a World Cup for a long time. So in the news, historically, Scotland have got a win. They defeated Haiti. Now, I mean, I have no idea of the form on Haiti, but they won 1-0. But it's the first win in 36 years. Now, that's got to be a bloody good thing to celebrate, hasn't it? Doesn't matter if you're an England supporter or whatever. You've got Scotland, first time in 36 years, going over there, going into their first match. And it must be a lot of pressure. And the eyes of the world are on it because everybody's saying, oh, we haven't seen them for 36 years, etc., etc. And they win. That's got to be great. Got to be. And I was over the moon. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these people that turn around and say, I'm not going to watch England and I'm not going to watch Scotland, you know, because I'm an England supporter and the other one said, well, I'm a Scotland supporter and all of this sort of stuff. Celebrate it for what it is. You know, I certainly will be trying to watch all the Scotland games, all the England games, anything that's, I mean, in my group, I'll be watching the games that England are against. In Scotland, probably less so, but we'll be watching every Scotland game and listening out for the news and everything else about it. That's the way I am. And now the England side. Now there's a lot of articles in the papers, news going on about England, and it's all pretty poor. One of them is something that you couldn't really envisage, severe weather. So the severe weather in where they're camped is hindering training, and therefore, obviously, it's going to have an effect. I'd be more concerned with the manager and his choices than anything. But yeah, severe weather. But it would be also the same for other teams that are in that sort of area. So what can we say? But the other one that was really disgusting is that 2 people are held for questioning at the moment, and that's because England training gear has been stolen, which means that certain training aspects are either on hold or very difficult to do. And I have no idea if this is internal, whether it's some sort of like act or ploy to make it so that England are hindered in their group by people who just don't like England. It hasn't happened to Scotland, it hasn't happened to all the other teams. I have no idea. But wow, just what is going on in the world? It's atrocious. So anyway, that's the news. A bit longer than normal, but that's because of the World Cup and my thoughts really a little bit about England. But well done, Scotland. We'll say that. Yeah, challenging week. We'll talk about work, which is not challenging. I had my meeting on Wednesday, and that went well. I explained to them that I'll be going back Monday, but my fit note, which I saw the doctor on Tuesday about, is extended to Tuesday, and that's because I might find it difficult sitting in a chair. You'll probably see me rocking about as normal because I'm in pain, and therefore I've got an extra day coverage. That's really nice. The visit to the doctor was Tuesday. It was one that I booked because I wanted it before I went back to work to see what we can do about my back. Tablets are, she just said, continue. Nothing I can do about that. That means extended use on drugs that I don't want to take, but I've got to. But she's also referred me to a skeletal assessment. Now, I've had one of these before, but I've always been able to get a skeletal assessment done quite quickly. I remember when I had to have that when it was diagnosed as sciatica for me back in 2005, and it was the operation that took the long time. This one is a 6-month referral. It means I might not be able to see anybody until December, and I'm in pain now. This has got to be wrong. It can't go on like this. And I'm angry about it. and obviously I've got no one to talk to at home about it. I don't get to see anybody. So it really is just something that I got to live with. And I'm just going to do the very best I can. When it comes to sort of like the rest of the week, Mum's all right, actually. As carers, that's my sister and I, doing everything we can. Things are, with the rolling back and forth, are not diminishing in the way that I'd like them to be, but that's because accidents happen, my mother might, when we're taking the pad off, suddenly go to the toilet, and that means another pad that needs to be done and another set of rolling left and right, which you can't envisage because you just don't know. If your mum can't say, oh, by the way, I'm just about to wee, there's nothing that you can do. When it comes to food, we're doing everything we can. I even just before doing this diary went to Sainsbury's because, mistakes happen, and my sister bought some food, but she forgot to bring it this morning, and therefore there's only a certain amount of food in the fridge. So of course I instantly went, do you know what? I can do that. Nothing to worry about. Bring it tomorrow. Cover the gap. You know what I mean? That's what you do. Unfortunately, arguments do happen. There was a massive one, a big one that upset both of us. I'm not going to go into detail with it, other than to say things were said that can never be retracted. I always put these things down as heat of the moments, but some of the stuff was from both sides, vicious. And all I know is at least I know really where I stand. And there are certain things that will be in place that if we can't work them out, then, and it starts to affect care and my mental health. Remember, it's a very difficult time early on, which we shouldn't have now, where, I will look into other things and get those corrected. What I will say is nobody is at fault. It's just one of those things, and I avoided all of this sort of stuff for the last 6 months like the plague. This particular instance could have been avoided. It wasn't. And that's the end of that. There's nothing else to say about it. I will say this. My sister is an incredible person at care. She's a very kind and considerate person. But when certain situations occur, things happen. That's it. Simple as that. And when it comes to me, I feel I am the same. But my portrayal never looks kind. That's what I'm trying to say. And that hurts. You want to hurt me? Make it so it's impossible to look other than the bad person all the time. And there we go. So that's all that out of the way. Very little information I'm going to give on that. It's very internal, and nothing has changed as far as I'm concerned in regards to my sister and how my mum's care is. We're all incredible people in difficult situations. That's all I've got to say about it. And no blame. Absolutely none. I want to make that perfectly clear. So, as I said, going to keep this light, going to try and compact it down, not be so verbose. And we get to the shout outs, and I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that watches, everybody that hits a like, anybody that subscribes, all of that sort of stuff, because I want to make it clear this is a diary. And in diaries, you have to mention what's on your mind, what your moods are, all of that sort of stuff, which is why certain stuff is mentioned, but it's how far I want to go with it. And in this particular instance, I don't want to go any further. And, you know, the comments that you make, all very, very happy. I love them all. There'll be an opinion. I will say this, that sometimes it's very difficult when you've done 225 diary entries, that you'll know that I've brought this subject up before, or the meaning of it was not correct because of something that I said earlier. So with that, I don't finger point and say, what's the point in you asking that comment when I've mentioned it, right? Because it's so difficult, right? That's the first thing out of the way. Every comment I love. Anybody that leaves a comment is going to be read out. If it's listed, YouTube sometimes removes it. And I'll come across that in a moment, because it's happened again to a particular friend that I don't understand why it keeps happening to. I make no or very few restrictions to anything. There's very little in the background that says, you know, this word or whatever, right, is not acceptable, because there is that sort of like freedom of speech. The only time I've ever removed something is when it's a person that knows that that's not acceptable. And that's very, very rare occurrence. In fact, I think it's happened 4 times, 5 times in 225 diaries. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, thank you from the bottom of my heart, for anybody, okay, that's watched, and especially for the people that have left a comment. And these are the people that are listed, and I'm going to make one honourable mention and then read out the comments. So they are, in no particular order: Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Denny, Stephen Taylor, Wee Bob Art, Carl Todd, Roberts Retro Gaming, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Muckman Movies, Martroid, and the honourable mention, because I don't know why it keeps happening to him, is one of my closest, nicest friends that you could ever have, Steve Still Plays Games, because he put an entry, because it was there and because of the way things happen for him. I read it, remembering what his question was, okay, and then when I looked this morning, it's not there. Now, he could have retracted it himself, don't know, but doubtful. And so I have to look at it that YouTube are making things happen in the back end. And it's horrible when that happens. I know they're making changes because certain aspects of analytics have changed on my side. They haven't changed it so I can't find what I'm looking for, but they're not in my face anymore. And, you know, that's awful, really. If you have a look, type into Google YouTube changes last 7 days or whatever, you will see a list, right? It's come up for me. And I see that if I put 6 months, you'll see that there's been some changes and they're rolling out gradually, which means I didn't even know they were going to happen, but it's obviously hit me. So there you go. So anyway, I read out all of that sort of stuff, and I think it's time that we got to the comments. And the first one, and as I said, no particular order, is from Stephen Taylor. And what he's put is, "Hi Del, I'm really sorry that you're struggling so much with your back and have to rely on painkillers to cope. Do the doctors think it can get better with exercise, or will you need a medical procedure to get it sorted out?" Good question. All great questions, and some of it I've already answered. Will it get better with exercise? Of course. Exercise means that you're pushing yourself. You're probably therefore losing weight by doing it. Such stuff like walking clears the mind, so that's great for mental health. And when it comes to your back, you follow the doctor's advice, and they've given me core strengthening exercises, which I do mostly on my bed because I've got very little room, and there's very little room in the rest of the house really to do those things, because the main room that I could do it in is tiled, and I have no sort of like cushiony type things that I can use. In this room, it's 18, 19 foot long by 9 foot wide. So when you get to the bed, the other side is filled by a keyboard. There's a very narrow channel. When you get to the bottom, it's the computer equipment and the telly, which you can see. And at the far end is where the toilet is, the door to get out, and obviously some storage things and telly and stuff. So you really have just got that narrow sliver of channel to actually do anything in a carpeted area, which is ideal carpeted. So that's the situation. So yes, most of the time I do it on my bed. I do them 3 times a day. The painkillers, I make a mental note that you can only take them 4 times a day. 2 of each of my tablets. One of them being cocodamol, the other one being gabapentin. And if you do a Google search on that, you'll know that gabapentin is a rough, nasty drug. Horrible. In fact, I reduced that down to 1 before this happened. And it's now gone up to every time I take a painkiller, it's taking another gabapentin. Gabapentin, the side effects of it, it doesn't mention it really too much, but it can have effects on your mood. With all the caring duties, it can be a very stressful time. And so, it can affect all of those conversations that you have, without even knowing it. Like I say, I'm not medically trained. I can only find out these things by asking the doctor or looking on Google. My sister's a great person of a knowledge base when it comes to medical. But again, it's only from looking, which I can do myself. So really, it's just a matter of it's in my own sort of ability to sort of try and help here. And in the past I've put my head in the sand and gone, it'll go away. It's not going to. What happened last week, and I don't know if I mentioned it because I can't remember, is I bought a back brace. Now, because I was at the doctor's, I showed this back brace. She told me exactly what I knew already, and that is the back brace is great and use it, but you don't have it on all the time. If you're going to be doing all the care for your mum, wear it. If you're going to go walking, it's a 50-50 split. Wearing it might help, but you won't be strengthening your core, because what the back brace does is basically compact the problem where it is, keeping you straight, which is fantastic. It might meld any tears that are probably going on, because that skin against skin, that flesh that is particularly damaged, may meld quicker. But you can't do your exercises, the swinging left and right, the sides going back and forth, the lifting your lower pelvis up and lowering it down, are not going to be any help whatsoever while wearing a back brace. So it's a double-edged sword, is all I can say about that. So yeah, lots of things there that we need to consider, Steve. If you don't mind me calling you Steve. Sorry, it's Stephen, isn't it? You continued, I watched one of my favourite films, Groundhog Day, this week. And as a question to you, I thought I'd ask, do you have a memorable day that you wish you could go back and relive again? That's a very, very great, good question. I'm not sure if I've had it before. I've never turned around and said that I'd like to do time travel too much. I'm more interested in periods and eras of time than I am individual days. But I think I had the most harmonious day. And we're going back now to when my dad was alive. And, we went fishing. I've told that story a million times, so I won't say it again. But it made us all laugh. I didn't feel bad about it, that I always thought to my dad that I was a disappointment because it always looked like I wasn't into sports, when actually it was more to do with the bullying that was going on in regards to being quite weighty. And even now I have problems with addressing that issue. In fact, I'm sure I infuriate a lot of people, including my sister, when those things affect me now. Like, I don't go swimming because I'm conscious about what I look like, how I am, and I'm an adult now. My aunt's mentioned it, just go. But, that was a long time ago that she said that. But it's good, it is right, just go, that's what I should be doing. But it's very difficult, incredibly difficult now in regards to, going, because of the fact that swimming, you have to get there, undress, swim, get dressed, go back. It's not something that you can really do in an hour, I don't feel, especially if you go for the first time, more like 2 hours or so. And that will eat up into the time that need to help my sister during the day in regards to looking after mum. And remember, I can't go in the evenings because there's just me. So it is one of those difficult things. So I will say that. So when it comes to eras, there's all that prominent stuff that was going on in the 80s, but there was a lot of bad downsides in regards to the bullying side of things. And of course, my career path really didn't take off until 88, 89, where I finally got back doing an office job, which I could expand upon. The other jobs I had were useless, really, in regards to a career path. So there's a lot of things that I missed when I was 18 and 19, I would say. So I suppose we're looking at a particular day, which I did say was with my father and fishing, but there are other ones that I could choose that are things like when I went on holiday, and particular days in those holidays where I had an absolutely fantastic time and also didn't think about what was going on at home. That could be considered selfish. Totally understand that, but it's not. It's just for one very basic moment in time, I was in a great place where I wasn't thinking about home. I was thinking about the now and me. And that's the unselfish thing in me, is that I bring it to light because I always think of others. So I put myself before anybody else, which you can't be proud of. I'm sorry, but I feel you can't. But there is a little bit that says, hey, how about me time? So, yeah, I will say that. So going back, I would probably say my holiday in Puerto Plata in 2007, I think it was a brilliant day. Got lots of food that cost nothing because it was an all-inclusive package. Managed to explore the area. I love exploring. Doesn't matter whether it's live or not. I love it. So I'm going to go with the holiday in Puerto Plata, which was about 2007. And I could just see me now being on the beach, doing absolutely nothing, catching the rays and going for a casual walk along the beach and taking in all the activities that other people were also in, because the hotel backed on to this beach. So they had everything was zoned off into personal areas. So that was really, really good. Enjoyed that. You say, have a good one, mate, and best wishes, Stephen. And I just want to say, Stephen, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I hope I answered all your questions. With that, I'm just going to take a small pause. Go after that. Sorry about that. I just needed to sort of refresh myself a little bit. So I think that's probably my best day. And many times I've been to America where I've been in a car, traveled across California and Arizona, where I just listened to the radio and took in the visuals. That was amazing. But I can't remember a standout day. So I'm going to go with that holiday in Puerto Plata. That I had there were many great days that I had. And he's put, have a great weekend and best wishes, Stephen. And thank you very much, Stephen. That's fantastic. And I hope I answered all of that. Salute to you. Then we've got, oh my God, War and Peace. You know, it's my friend Denny. Probably the person that I speak to the most, communicate with the most of the people. It's very close with Rocket Bunny, Steve, and May Meister and Robert and a few others. But you know, we'll read out what he's put anyway. He's put, hiya mate. Glad to see you in Guild Wars 2, if only for a couple of messages back and forth. Yes, you may remember that Guild Wars 3 was mentioned last week, and we both went, oh, Guild Wars 2, and we've got a couple of years. We probably need to go back to it at some point. And I've managed to find a couple of hours to go back. And of course, I haven't. The first thing that happened to me is all these messages, which is the delivery system in the game, flashed up, and it instantly said, you're encumbered. Now, I don't know if you know what that word really means in the game, but it basically means that all my backpack items, I've used up every space. And in the game, you've got what they call a bank as well. And when I looked at that, that was filled as well. And there were things that the messages that were there that were saying you've got items to collect that is over, well, it must be 4 years since I logged into the game. So I had 4 years of anniversary presents, 4 years of yields, daily yields, 4 years of events that it said go and look at, and here's something for that event, that were all still there, etc., etc. And that meant I had to have this message all over the screen, and had to go to my bank, look at my bags, and go, what am I going to do? Right? So I, tried to destroy stuff that I thought was not needed. In the game, it's very difficult because you don't know really if a trophy item, that's an item that you won for something, is required anymore. So you do a bit of research and you find, trophy items are shit. So I went, okay, that letter can go, this can go, all of that sort of stuff. Even though I know that in the game it took me days to do, and it's why I held on to it, because I didn't know if it was going to be used again. So got rid. Then you start going through the messages, taking it, and it fills up, and you just keep going. One of the things that happened with the Guild Wars 3 announcement was it gave you a new character slot, gave you some expansions that you might not have had. And what I mean by expansions there is the patches with the what do they call it now? Side stories, which used to cost money, and the other thing it gave you was a bag with more slots, and I think it gave me as well a bank slot. Now the problem, no, it didn't give you a bank slot, it just gave you a bag slot. The problem is you've got to get to that message to get the bag, and the problem with that is you've got to go through all the other messages before you can get to the bag. Oh. So there's a bag that would have helped me, but I can't get to it until all the other messages are out of the way. It was hard. It took me a good hour to do that, and that's about all I had, and I had to keep coming back to it because obviously things like caring and all that sort of stuff came in. Plus there's cleaning to do around the house and all that sort of stuff, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But with the rain it helped a bit, so I did manage to find some time to do that, and I'm glad I did. The other hour I had was talking to my friend Denny by just a few messages, but I also found out where I was in the game. And it was distressing, actually, because in the game you could type in the chat window /age, right? When you do that, it tells you how long you've been playing with that character. And I logged in with my character that I played the most, right? And the amount of hours, oh, wow. And then you look and see how far you are in the game when it comes to your story, and I'm nowhere. In fact, I think I just about got to the point where you got a mount. A mount is something that you ride on the back of to traverse the area quicker. So, yeah. Ridiculous, really. I must have been doing all that other crap that I've told you about in the game, which is daily stuff. You know, you go to your daily instance and you mine gold and silver and allurium and candy cane cobs and all of this sort of stuff, right? And I logged in, got that stuff, might have done an event. An event doesn't help you, by the way, other than get gear, and then log out. And I must have done that ad infinitum, like in festivals and stuff like that. And that meant I wasn't progressing the story. And progressing the story meant that I was getting things that I need later on, like gliding, mounts, getting mastery points for those mounts to be able to jump higher, run faster, all of that sort of stuff. So I've got just the basic crap, right? And therefore, that's got to change. Especially if you want to play with others, you know, so it's terrible, really. He continues, I have so much stuff to sort out after 4 years of inactivity, so it's about the same amount of time as me. In fact, probably from the time I started this YouTube video, really, is when I last logged in, so it's 4 or 5 years. I think I will delete most of it, or I'll never have any room left. And that's over all characters. I have one of each. And I must admit, I've got several characters, but not one of each, I have to say. There seems to be a new daily reward on top of the daily reward called the Wizard's Vault. So much extra clutter from the rewards. Yes, I noticed it. It was new. It was never there when I was playing the game. I looked at it. It's where you don't need to go to something called the gem store. Anybody that knows anything about Guild Wars knows that it's free. You bought the game, you can go anywhere you want, play anything you want, and get most of the stuff that you ever need in the game, but there are things what they call quality of life. And that requires gems or gold. You can use the gold in the game to convert to gems and then use those gems to buy those quality of life items. Now, that means you don't have to pay a penny. But if you haven't got enough gold, you have to get the gems. The Wizard's Vault is another form of gold. Just by logging into the game gives you a credit. In those credits, you can get things that might be quality of life. One good one that I saw there that only costs 8 credits. By the way, you can get 15 to 30 credits just by logging in and doing a 5-minute thing. Gave you a bag of bag of gold. Now, what that means is you bought that with the Wizard's Vault, which costs no money, and then you consumed it by double-click on it, and it gave you 1 gold. So you'd have 30 to 31 gold in any month. Maybe, well, obviously not February. But what I'm trying to say there is that 30 gold could then be converted to gems, and then in the gem store you can buy items that are going to be beneficial for you. It's not complex. I think I've explained it quite well. That's what I'm talking about in regards to the Wizard's Vault. He continues, sadly though, my game can be a flicker pad and rubber banding a constant issue. It's extremely hard to play in high congested areas due to my system. It's showing its age now. No doubt I'll have to get a new one near the year's end if the cost of RAM drops a little. I hope it does for you, matey. Or I hope you can transfer certain money that you're buying on, I know, stuff that makes you happy, into something that you can, do for your computer. The computer is quite an important thing because I know that it can be used for cataloguing your stuff and all of that. So it's not just this game. But I have to admit, the engine has not changed that much. So that's not the problem. It's the fact that they've announced something that means that you're going to therefore have a lot more people, and it's got to keep track of that, and your machine goes to a crawl. And on my system, I haven't noticed it, but remember, I refreshed mine over Christmas. Still paying that off. And it's a good thing I did because I needed my YouTube and everything to continue. I was in a very bad situation, so had to do it. It wasn't just YouTube. I needed it for everything, really. My phone isn't the best way to surf the internet. There's the internet and all sorts of other stuff, quality of life, that I do on my computer, so therefore it was very important. You continue. A couple of interesting new bits on Guild Wars 3. Not substantiated, but it could be the end of Zerg events. Guild Wars 3 looks to follow the instanced mission-based structure with friends and heroes. There may be open world areas with events, but a cross between the two worlds benefit the game, in my opinion. How they would go about the boss events is anyone's guess, but it needs to change from the absolute pile on it, what it is now. Would timers need to go to, in my opinion? Yeah. I'll just explain a little bit there because it's got a little bit of jargon and stuff in there. Boss events. Now, boss events is where they're happening across the whole of the world. It makes it a living world. That's what the big thing was in Guild Wars. When you go for these bosses, everybody knows about them. Bang, you fight, all over with, go back to what you were doing. There's even something called a boss portal, which when you double click on takes you to the closest next event. And in the wiki, which you can access by just in the chat window of the game typing /wiki and then what you want to know about, will give you information and give you the timers for everything that's going on, making that particular device a bit redundant. But it's a living world. And in a living world, it means that was a main feature of why you bought the game. And in Guild Wars 3, are they going to continue that? Because it's, again, another living world. We don't know. So anyway, you go. Multiple mounts seem to be on the cards too. All speculation, but it is a known fact. All 3 games will be separate in their design. Yes, everything will be separate. So we know Guild Wars 3's probably in pretty good hands. We just don't know what's going to be in it. Not much more to add for this week, as it's been a week of afternoons. Yes, that means where he's working at the moment. So a question for this week: what mounts is your favourite in Guild Wars 2 and why? Which makes the question a bit redundant because I've just mentioned about mounts. I looked in the game and I've got 2 mounts. They are a Raptor and a Springer. Now, the Springer at the moment is my favourite. What it is, it's like a big bunny rabbit. And when you charge it up, in other words, when you hold down the button when you're riding on it, it springs very high. One of the biggest problems in Guild Wars is coming across walls. And it says you've got to wait for this event before you can go through this blocked entrance. You can actually bypass that by springing over it, right? Not advisable, because whatever's behind there is bloody big, you know, huge veteran type creatures that you need multiple people to destroy. But with the Raptor, you can then switch to the Raptor on the fly and speed across these areas to get to the bit that you want to do. I will tell you now that the biggest problem in Guild Wars 2 for me is completing little events like vistas and mastery points and all of this sort of stuff, or hero points as we call them, because you've got to wait 20 minutes before this door will open. Because you'll go away, forget about it, and then it'll be shut again when you want to do it. So the Springer is easily my favourite, but there are other ones. And I looked into this. There's a gliding one, which glides and skims across the water, but there is also a winged one that means that you can stay permanently in the air and fly across. How much you need to get that, I don't know, but apparently it's mostly in the Living World Story 3, and I'm nowhere near that. So it's something that I need to start. So when it comes to mounts, mate, Springer is the one that I like, and that's the reason for it, because I can jump over things that I could never glide to or jump as a character in the game without mounting something, and that is a creature. All the best, mate. I'm on mornings next week, so a phone call is definitely in the making. All the best to your mother. And yes, thank you very much, matey. We will have that. And yes, I'm back at work, but it is a phased return, so it might be a little bit easier. Although, as you know, as soon as my sister goes, it's just me and my mum, so I'm all over the place. Salute, my friend. The next one, therefore, is from Carl Todd. Sorry, needed a bit of water. And welcome, Carl Todd. Thank you very much for your comment, and here we go. Hi, Del. I hope that this week has been a comfortable week for you and your mum. If you started work, then I hope that that went well too. That's this week, matey, so I'll just take that into next week. And of course, you know from the beginning where we are with the rest. Some feedback to last week's diary. I used to put Vblog, but it is a diary. Sorry for the typos. I was pressed for time, and the iPad's autocorrect went a bit rogue. Don't we all know about autocorrect? What a load of shit. No finger pointing here. It doesn't matter. Apparently, the people that greenlit the development of the new Stargate show left early this year, and the people that took over just weren't fans. Regarding the PS4, oh, right, so that's interesting to know about the Stargate. I thought it was the writers that said we're not going to go against what our feelings were on that. Regarding the PS4, I mainly bought that up because there seemed to be continual updates in the jailbreaking scene for both PS4 and PS5, and there seems to be many software jailbreaks available. You asked if I had jailbroken my console. Well, I don't have any of the recent consoles. I didn't buy any after the Xbox 360, and yes, that is one that is modded. Yes, so is mine. That's the one that I've got. Well, actually, I've got 5 Xbox 360s. 2 of them were from eBay. One of them was a legit one, and 2 of them were swaps with my friend Kelly, believe it or not. And one of those had a hardware mod on it. He knew all about it because the biggest problem with 360 is the board and the drive. That's the hard drive and the DVD drive that's in it, matched perfectly with a serial number type thing, and you had to that meant that you couldn't just swap something out. So the modding kit took that away and also made it so that homebrew stuff could happen. So that was the great thing about that. Zenio is an online store where you can subscribe to digital magazines. Magster is another one. So that's talking about the magazines that we were talking about last week, where we discussed, are magazines dead? Do we love the ones, miss the ones that we used to buy, etc.? And I must admit, one of the computer ones I used to buy is still going, but I rarely buy it. I do get the PDFs of the new Ep17 since I'm in Thailand. The price of shipping can be the same as the cost of the magazine, so that's why I moved to digital. There is a new zombie movie from the director of Train to Busan, which has recently opened in the cinema. It is called Colony. I haven't had a chance to watch it, and it isn't set in the same universe, but the director and choreographer are the same. You will be able to find a trailer in YouTube. Also, thanks for mentioning the bricks in minifig story the previous week. That is such a crazy story, and it's still ongoing, and it might be near the end from what I was watching this week, because he's in Mexico, or he was lawyerless. So basically he's had to do everything where he protects himself, and they've put some type of gag type thing which makes it very awkward for him to mention one of the things that he did in his video in regards to a charity event where he set up a company. He can't mention that company, so he's in dire straits. Train to Busan I'm looking forward to, so I'll look out for Colony. That will be definitely there. PDFs for Zap64, my opinion on it, absolutely fantastic if that's what you need. I'm not a big fan of digital. I did digital comic preservation, so you know I used to do the digital stuff. It was a great thing to do, but the readers and all that sort of stuff, it's not as great as reading a book, turning the page. You have to zone in on a separate section and have it copy through. PDFs are not fantastic either, so you have to expand the screen and lower the screen, go to the next bit and expand the screen and all sorts of stuff. And there are readers that make that so much easier, but you have to buy them. So not only are you buying the magazine, but you're also buying the reader. And then, you know, there are probably free ones. There was definitely a CBZ one that I got that was free, so I'm sure there are others. But it's just, how much other stuff have I got to put on a hard drive and zone it out and put it in a folder and keep that there and go back to it, and, you know, where I could just go to a magazine box that I've got, get the magazine and read it. You know, it's just one of those things where I just don't want another digital means for something, but we're heading in that way, so I must address that. That's no contradiction to what you're doing or anything else. Questions you've got. Did you see the announcement of Star Trek Shadow Frontier? It's a first-person horror survival game set in the Star Trek universe. To me, it seems a big diversion from what most fans would want in a new Star Trek game, and I think that Alien Isolation will overshadow it. Do you have any thoughts on it, and what would you want in a new Star Trek game? Very interesting. I didn't know about Star Trek Shadow Frontier. I'll look into that when I go back. I take it it's on Steam. But what you've said about it, a third person or first person type game, we've seen those in Voyager, and there was a Klingon one, I think, and they used the Quake engine at the time. I think they were all right. Wasn't immersed in them particularly great. There was a couple of VR ones I've loved. Bridge Commander was a VR one I played. It did immerse you because of the VR treatment. But I went off of Star Trek games when they stopped being in big boxes, believe it or not. I think Bridge, sort of like I think there was a Star Trek High Command type thing, was the last time I bought something. Can't quite remember what it was. But the next after that I bought was the Star Trek Online, which I played, but it was buggy as hell at the beginning, and I never went back to it. I enjoyed the time that I was in it because of the voiceovers, but I've never gone back to it, probably because it's an MMO type thing, and I don't have the time. But I did see this week, and this is because of Worthaby. Don't really watch him too much, but no, it wasn't Worthaby. Sorry, no, it just turned up in my alerts. That's right. It was called Star Trek Outpost. Outpost Unknown, that's it. It's a city building game. It's where there's something happening in a universe. You've got a ship. You're going to take everybody from this doomed planet, plonk them somewhere else. You've got to build a city. That means you've got to mine ore and metal and wood and all that sort of stuff. Build yourself specific things like oxygen units and all of that sort of stuff, especially if the planet's not terraformed. So you're going to have to build housing plateaus. It's going to be like Sim City, basically, with Star Trek as the main skin over the top of it. That seems more like a game that fits into Star Trek than this first-person horror survival game. Yes, that fills me with dread. I dare say everything is under the Paramount brand, so I have little hope in any of these games, really, to be quite honest. If you were to call me out, I don't have much in the way of positives for it. Number 2. That was number 2. Number 3. After the news about Doctor Who being basically on a hiatus now, what do you hope for in a future series, and how long do you think it will be away for? I must admit, this would have been covered a bit later on in what I watched. If anybody hasn't watched it, Doctor Who is not specifically cancelled, but they've cancelled the winter special. Russell T Davies, who was the showrunner, has left. That means that whole company that made Doctor Who has gone. They'll be now disbanding all of the sets, unless they are going to keep them folded up in a way that they do sell on to whatever happens. And that is not going to be the BBC, because the BBC announcement said it's out for tender. That's the big thing to me. It's not about losing Russell T Davies. Nothing about what he said. It's that it's out for tender. Because what you have to understand is the BBC is funded by us through a TV license, and in 2 years, it's up. That tender license is up for renewal, and it has to go through Parliament. And I think Parliament is going to look at the TV licensing, how it's done. That's going to be, I think, gone, and therefore BBC has got to work out how they're going to fund all their commentators and all their news people and everything else, the technical equipment they're going to need, etc. From that point of view, starting up a show like Doctor Who and then finding out that you've got no money, so you have to put it on hold again, is what I think they mean by it's on hold. They continue to have the IP. It's very big for them. They sell their Blu-rays and their 4Ks based on Doctor Who. That's the majority of where their money comes from. But they do have Blake 7 and a few other things that they can sell. So yeah, it's going to be very difficult, and I therefore understand why it's on hold. But out for tender, I don't know who's going to take that up. Amazon? Can't be Disney. We've had them already. Apple? Nah. Just don't see it. So, yeah. How long do I think it'll be away for? Years. I would have said now. Sadly, I may be proved wrong, but I'm going to say right now, it's going to be unlikely before the license fee is up for tender. And that's 2 years. So, yeah, that's the best guess, really. Well, I've probably wrote too much this time. Wishes, as always, to you and your mum. No salute. Thank you very much. And it's getting very close now to the point where I've got to help and change my mother so that she feels all fresh. So I'm just going to put a little pause here before moving on. It'll be seconds for you.
Yeah, well, I had a bit of a thrilling time there, and time's moved on a little bit. A couple of doors down, we've got some neighbours, absolutely wonderful. One of them lost their daughter and their father about a year or so ago. Friends of our family, leaving just the two sons and the mother. And the mother is got problems, with sight and walking. And saw them outside and had a chat, and I've offered them to come in and see my mum whenever they want. Door's always open for them. They've done exactly the same for us. So I explained to them how we're both coping, and I said my sister's doing marvellously. And we're doing the best that we can, and we got certain stuff that's in hand in regards to the doctors. So marvelous. It was a nice, interesting chat. And then changed, my mother for the second time today out of 3, and I'm back. So here we go. So the salute to, let's see, who was the last one? Salute to Carl Todd. Hope I answered all your questions. And we move on to my friend Ian Hill, the Ramblings, who I do a live stream every Wednesday. Got a great channel. Please go and have a little look. Fantastic. And because the England game, by the way, is on Wednesday, we've moved our talk for that match to Thursday this week. So a little note in regards to that. But that doesn't stop you going over there, looking, liking, subscribing, following, all of that good stuff. And we'll read out what he's put. He's put, "Hi, Del Boy. Another week goes by. Hope you and your mum are having a week without too many problems. Life goes on, and we should try to make the best of it because that's what we do. The doctor's surgery contacted me after my blood test. I've got iron deficiency." Now, this is what my mother had, and she had to have an injection, and it stained her hand just here. My mum looks at it and thinks that scratching it gets rid of it. That's because it's under the skin. It's a stain it can be permanent, but mostly it will disperse based on age, your blood flow, all of that sort of stuff. So it's probably going to remain for my mum, but not for hopefully not for Ian. I've got iron deficiency, so I've been prescribed some iron tablets. We used to have that till my mum had an injection. I think maybe it could explain why I'm feeling so cold all the time. My mother's the same. After my doctor's visit, I managed to walk into town at a steady pace. Went as usual to charity shops and found no Blu-rays or DVD box sets or good CDs. This is happening now all the time in my town. I do see other YouTubers though getting some bargains, so there is some out there in the wild. Kex, Sex, CEX, however you want to call it. We're very poor and overpriced on 4Ks for definite, but I don't see many 4Ks in the charity shops, but I do use them for DVDs and Blu-ray, especially TV stuff mostly. Jim Jam, by the way, is a great channel to go and have a little look at for going into charity shops. He does less of it now, but he still does the odd one. And they'll give you some tips as well. So that's good. I've been watching quite a lot. I love the Spider Noir series, and Nicolas Cage was excellent. It was class. I loved watching again Birdman of Alcatraz, 1962, based on a true story of Robert Stroud. Burt Lancaster gave one of the career best performances. I also, right, before we go any further, we got here Spider Noir. Yeah, I'm up to episode 6 of 8. Looking forward to watching the final 2. Fantastic series, by the way. Loving every minute of it, really. Probably because of I'm watching it in black and white rather than the colorized version. Although sometimes I do just quickly look at the colorized one just to see what that would look like. Rare though. I like the fact it's noir. It's like old gangstery or crime thriller stuff in black and white. If you remember those days of watching Spencer Tracy and Humphrey Bogart, all that sort of stuff, you'll realise what I'm talking about. Especially as the setting is Prohibition, 1930s, all that sort of stuff. And there are references to World War One and stuff like that. So it is good. Birdman of Alcatraz, on the other hand, fantastic film, one of my favourites. I've only got it, I think, on DVD. I definitely don't have the Blu-ray. It should have a 4K in my opinion. The Blu-ray I might seek out if I've got some cash, but right now it's mum. So I can't really put it to a pre-order type thing. But I will definitely look out for a cheap one if I can. It definitely has Burt Lancaster as a career performance, but you got Carl Malden in there, fantastic as the warden. You've got Telly Savalas in it. Kojak with hair, and all of the story in regards to looking after birds in prison, the cages, how you make them, and how he diagnosed how to cure them of certain bird diseases, especially as the prisons were not the cleanest environments when this was going on. I don't want to give too much away. It's fantastic. I also watched the last Hammer Dracula film, The Satanic Rites of Dracula, 1973. It was set in the 70s. Dracula in the modern era at the time. It is a weak film, enjoyable, but a sad end to the Hammer Dracula films. I agree. Yeah. It is modern times for the era, 70s, although if you think about it, when we go back to that, you're talking 50 years. Not exactly modern, but it is modern when you consider Dracula in the 18th century, 19th century, which Hammer were fantastic at. So my question this week is, what's your favourite Hammer films? Let me have a think. Got to get this away. See what comes to mind. Straying away from horror. I did like listening or watching the Quatermass ones, even though the BBC had done an equally good black and white series type version of Quatermass. In fact, Hammer have done 2 of those Quatermass ones. I think they renamed one of them to 5 million miles away from Earth or something it was called. Can't quite remember the number or the title. It's one of those early prerequisite ones. So the Quatermass series. There is one horror one that's not mentioned an awful lot that I enjoyed, and that was The Nanny. But then again, that's because I like Bette Davis. Pretty sure that was a Hammer one. Obviously, I love all the Dracula, Curse of Frankensteins, all of that. You don't even have to mention them, if you see what I mean. When I was on the chats with people about movies, one was mentioned, never give candy to strangers, which made me look, and I know I didn't have it, so I ordered it. And that's a fantastic one. That's eerily spooky. That one's a really clever one. I like that one. But we mustn't forget that Hammer did comedies. I used to love On the Buses, Man About the House, George and Mildred. I spoke to my sister about that, and she actually this week watched Love Thy Neighbour, which is a curious one. Don't want to get killed about this one, but Love Thy Neighbour was a TV series, and for years and years and years, people didn't watch it, and ITV didn't rescreen it because it is about a bigamist, possibly a racist, and a white lower class person living in a middle class district with a neighbour that moves in that is African descent. So all sorts of horrible remarks were said to each other from both sides. This is what you have to remember. There was, Milky Bar Kid and Dewdrop and all of that sort of stuff said to him, but he said horrible things equally back. But it was the comedy of the time, and it doesn't get away from the fact that there is some good neighbour versus neighbour stuff to watch, and it's making comedy of the privileged white person, I suppose, really, because he's the one who's the target. It's like, oh, how can you say that? So
it's actually targeting the very thing that people fight about, you know, and showing how you shouldn't do that. So I'm glad my sister watched it. We, you know, chatted about it, and it's and we agree that it doesn't get over the fact that it can have some funny parts to it. So, you know, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. The last one that comes to mind is one of the last ones I bought of Hammer, which was The Devil Rides Out. But there are many good ones, Ian, and you know that, and you've got most of them. So hopefully you've got The Nanny. If you haven't watched that in a while, please do so. You say a nice easy question. There are no easy questions, I can tell you that with my brain. It's like a colander. Would have said a sieve, but colander's got bigger holes, right? You put all the best, you and your mother, and have a reet grand time. And he does it like this, a reet grand time. And I'll try. Thank you so much. Salute. Go and watch his channel. Description. All the rest. We move to Wee Bob Art. What a channel he's got. And I'm looking forward to his art stuff coming back, because I need some tips, to be quite honest. Hi, Del. I won't be doing any more zombie episodes, at least not soon. What a shame. I really like that. I had him in the background. Sometimes I'd watch them all the way through, and other times I'd listen to them because the voicing over was great. He put, this is the second week off for me, and I'm doing DIY, decorating one of our smaller rooms after my boy moved out officially. Painting done, new light fittings, but I need to fix that as it is off-centre. Carpet arrived today, so hopefully by Friday I will have the most of the work complete. I have bought a smaller OLED TV for the room and some shelves for movies. I'm interested. The smaller OLED. What's the smallest OLED you can get these days? I remember when we had to go and get my mum a new TV, we both went into Curry's. And it's a weird thing to say that because I don't like Curry's. But the reason for it was, and I'll explain. My mum could see the TV because obviously she's buying it because it was for her. This was before the dementia. The other thing is that she's deaf. So you can't, when you go to Amazon and you go, right, I'm going to have that telly, right? Or go to a specialist store. That's what I would do if you want a big one. But going to Amazon, you don't know what the speakers are like. You can go down to the comments. Oh, the sound was tinny, blah, blah, blah. But you'll be there forever. What you want is your mum to hear it and go, right, you can hear that. That's all we need to know, right? You can then look on Amazon and see if that telly's on there, and you can walk out the store, or you can buy the one that was there. We bought in the end a Sony. Not the make I would have bought. I know all about Sony and the fact that their panels have got LG screens and the bezel and the electronics are Sony, and that's why you're buying a premium because of the badge. But there are some good Sony sets. I'm putting a critical thing on that, but I was looking at those and I was hoping to get something like an LG or something for my mum because, to be quite honest, she doesn't need anything expensive. Anyway, we had to buy it. And, you know, we gave over the money. I put some in. And we've still got it now. Marvellous. The telly that we had before it, my dad bought. I remember we both went into Sainsbury's and went to Curry's as well. And eventually we bought the one in Sainsbury's, and it was an LED. And it lasted us 10 years. Wow. I remember we paid £299 for it. And it was a 28-inch. It's all that would fit in the cove that we could put it in. We couldn't put things on the wall. That's a no from my mum. She'd have said, no, we're not doing that. So it had to go on a stand. So there you go. And yeah, diversing a little bit, but that's how that worked out. But interesting to know what you bought, because I think OLEDs start off at a certain size and go up to large, massive ones. Even mine's an OLED and it's 55-inch. TV for the room and some shelves for the movies. I look forward to it being completed and ready to watch movies in. I would do a little video once it is complete, as I have done a time lapse of the work as I progressed. Anyway, great to listen along as always, and some nice pickups you showed at the end. I try to do the shows. Yeah, that's great. Question for next time. My wife wanted to watch a movie where a guy sits on a toilet and gets munched by a monster. She couldn't remember which movie it was. Anyway, it ended up being Ghoulies 2, which was the third movie we watched after Ghoulies and then Critters. Is there any cheesy horror movies from your past that you remember a specific scene from? And are there any ones you would love to give a rewatch or watch for the first time? Well, I wouldn't know if it's in that, if it's for the first time, unless I do some research. I don't think I've got many horror films, but I've seen some fantastically cheesy, and I will say this very closely, bad death scenes in my life, or funny ones. One I don't like to talk about, to be quite honest, is Nicolas Cage in a remake of a film that I loved in the olden days, of Wicker Man. It's just that what they do is they put this mask or bowl on his head and they drop bees into it. You see the bees on him and he's being stung while this thing's over his head. But oh my God, what an over-the-top performance, and what a bad film Wicker Man is. So it doesn't quite fit your question because it's like to re-see. But I remember that scene very, very vividly, is the word. As is the lovely one, which always makes me laugh every time I see it. And that's in Jurassic Park, because when you were talking about the toilet, there's the guy that is trying to get his phone to work, and he runs away from the Tyrannosaurus Rex and ends up sitting on a toilet. But of course, everything all drops around the shielding of this toilet. There he is sitting down, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex just gobbles him up and goes, and eats him, and goes away. That makes me laugh every time I see it. There's a shark in Deep Blue Sea, and it's Samuel L. Jackson, and he's talking about how he's going to outwit the sharks or whatever it is. And there's this big long speech, and this shark comes along and has him. Much the same way as the Jurassic Park one. Deep Blue Sea is a good film anyway, but it's just that's got a comedy moment in it. And oh well, I watched this the other day, and of course I should remember it anyway. But in Pulp Fiction, just talking about Samuel L. Jackson for a moment, they're talking in the car with John Travolta with the guy in the back seat, and they turn around to talk to him, and the gun's in their hand, and it goes off, and all you see is this blood splatter across the back windscreen. And I think he says, and it makes me laugh, he looks better for it, with his face blown off. You don't see it, the face blown off. You just see the blood splatter on the back. And it just, that just makes me laugh a little bit. It's supposed to be a funny, stupid thing, to be quite honest. I can't imagine that being real tense moment, if you see what I mean. I'm not quite sure if it's the famous scene about the burgers' names, like a Royale with cheese, I think he called it. I think it's a bit later on. I think it's middle of the film. It jumps about a bit because it's about little stories individually going around this event. So anyway, has that answered your question? I think so, a little bit, but probably nothing that you haven't already seen, which is a shame. But your knowledge is getting really, really good now. So anyway, all the best wishes as normal to you and your family. And I'm going to say salute, and I'm going to say, look, he's in my description. Go and have a look at his channel. You will pick up movie stuff, community stuff, all of that, plus his art, how he does digital art. That's why mostly I go there, but there's so much other stuff that I really like. Salute, my friend, and thank you very much. And we move to Colin Jones, aka Ponder. And, well, we all know what I think about my friend Colin. He's absolutely fantastic, very technical guy, always putting me straight on things, which is annoying. But then again, my brain's not particularly fantastic, firing on all cylinders, if you see what I mean. And he's put fingers crossed on a positive return to work. Hope your pain can be reduced soon. Too. Sending my regards to your mum as always. Hope the issue you mentioned in your comment on my diary isn't serious. Maybe I'll address that, but right, not now. Good progress on the walking a mile. Yes, I was so happy. I probably have done that a couple of times, but that would have been shopping. You do quite a bit of walking when you do the shopping, going around all the aisles. Because I'm always looking for something new. I'm sick of giving mum the same stuff over and over again. So, yeah. For the record, I don't consider using AI for restoration improvements of old stuff as slop. This is an acceptable use case. Just something that I forgot to mention when recording my vlog. And was reminded while watching here. No, that's fine. It was actually under a comment under Denny, and I think I'm pretty sure that we're probably all just sick of hearing AI. I mention it when it's mentioned, and only if it's in the news section. Otherwise, I rarely talk about it. It's at work, and I don't have a choice. So it's a bit difficult. So I will say that. You continue. There's always the VOD on Twitch. I've left a link to you in Discord. I think that's about... Oh, I don't watch stuff on Twitch. And the stuff that he was doing about the VIC-20. And I went, oh! And he did put in my Discord a link. And I watched it. And wow! Played some great stuff there. Lots of memories coming back. It was stuff I knew, but it's always great to see the VIC-20 getting out in. That's what I like to say. And if I was on Twitch, I'd be doing a lot more VIC-20. You did some of the stuff I would have done, Bounty Bob. You know, I'd bring in that one that I did, Mountain Man, I think it's called. I forgot what it's called. Yeah. That's a great one. And there's that there's just so many. You did Perils of Willie and all of that, which is great. I might do Bonzo. That would be a good one. I haven't seen Bonzo in a while. Anyway, daytime TV, you said. Programs for the hard of thinking. Also applies to reality TV, especially applies to reality TV. Exactly. All I was getting at was I'm sort of watching it because while I was off work, there are things I need to do around the house. There are things that I need to do for my mum. It's in intervals of like 20, 30 minutes. I rarely find the time to watch something. And then when I do, sometimes sleep catch up gets to me. So another reason why it's getting my eyes away from TV, watching screens. Try to watch it at night where it won't matter because I need to go to bed anyway and sleep. So, you know, the worst thing is phones. You look at these things for too long without a blue filter and you're just damaging yourself. Question: which sci-fi gadget do you wish existed in real life? Oh, so many good ones, haven't we, that we've had. But in Star Trek, and you say gadgets, so I'm not going to say major devices, right? Because wouldn't it be great if we had a transporter, right? But you got to turn around and say it's iconic, the tricorder, haven't you? The tricorder, that bloody noise, whee, which I love, by the way. I'm not saying bloody noise; it's actually a great noise. Scanning everything and telling you what it's like and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got McCoy's medical device. that looks like a salt cellar, that tells you if you've got cancer or not, or broken bones. Wouldn't that be great for our doctors? Yeah, got a broken leg in that sort of position, know exactly what to do. Put this poultice on it for the infection and all of that. Those two rapidly stand. But I want a ray gun. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but we've got a very long garden, and I wasn't allowed to, I had a single shot gauge gun that was Dad's and mine. Really, it was my dad's, but he said it was mine, right? Years back, which we used to go rabbiting with. He had a double barrel shotgun. So did my uncle, and he still does. He's got a license. But I used to love air pistols. Used to love going to the fair, and I knew that all the sights were all tricky and all that sort of stuff, but it didn't bother me. I wanted an air gun. So I wasn't allowed to have one. So my dad gave me a Black Widow catapult, slingshot, which again was supposed to be used on farms for killing rats. And I used to put marbles and stretch them, take it like this. This thing had an armrest that went to the holder there, right? So it was along your arm. And you pull back, you let it go. It would 100 miles an hour, shattered at the bottom of our garden where it hit the fence or a limb of a tree. And I tried to get good with it by putting targets. I did have a air pistol. It was a 177 gun, but it was useless. It was a pull-back gun. You pulled the spring back, pushed it, fired. The little pellet went into where the eyesight was at the tip of the gun, fired it. But I really wanted a 2.2 rifle, and I wasn't allowed to have one. And I also wanted to go to archery and have archery lessons. So a ray gun, love it, wouldn't you? Like I'd like the one out of Space 1999. It looked like a knuckle duster. Didn't really get on with the ones in Star Trek. They just looked like regular guns. But the Space 1999 one was cool. Looked like a knuckle duster with, and I had a toy version of that. Yeah, I remember now. I had a toy version of that, along with my Dinky Eagle and all that. My friend had the Big Eagle, the one where you could put figures in it. That's rare now, apparently. Anyway, I think that's answered your question, Colin. I hope I've given you enough time as well in this massive diary. Salute, go and look at his channel. He's got 2 of them. They're all in the description. And we get to Muckman Movies. Jamie, yeah, he's but hi, Del Boy. I wouldn't worry about your confidence doing a live stream. You have the technical know-how and you seem confident enough on Ian's live stream. Yeah, I suppose what I was trying to get across is it's about other things that I have a lack of confidence in, which I don't really want to discuss because it's quite private. But when I do Ian's live stream, we're doing it together. So you've got the confidence to know that you've got another person with you. Technical know-how, oh yeah. I know how to use OBS, I know how to use the camera, I know how to use my microphone, I know how to change, images, as simple as that. Yeah, I've set all this up. I'm well aware of the tricks and tips of a lot of it. So, not a problem there. No, it's time. I definitely said time was a problem. So, but yeah, there is a confidence issue, which, will go away. You know what I mean? Agreed, I wouldn't get pressured into doing one every week. I only do it when the mood and time permit. I would tag you in my top 10 challenges, but I know you have limited time due to your circumstances. So don't feel like you're being left out. I'm actually being considerate, knowing the most of your time is understandably spent looking after your mum. Let me know in Ian's live stream if you want to be included at any point. No, see, again, that wasn't the point. It was I was trying to explain a jealousy thing, and it wasn't necessarily pointing anyone out. What I was trying to get at is that, you see sometimes certain people will mention just the same channels all the time, right? And I might give some information, or I might have done something that I know that people have watched, but they won't mention that. And it really was a throwaway comment, nothing to really talk about as much. I think I even mentioned in many ways I'm glad I'm not part of those challenges, because I'd find difficulty in doing them. I actually mentioned that. I know I said that. So it's not something that needs to be discussed. No, it's purely I watched this on Delboy's stream, or I watched it, it's just because it's just a jealousy thing, because I see so many others being mentioned, and I've always I was one of those people, and I said this from the very beginning, I'm a big collaborator, and from a collaboration point of view, I like to say to a friend, oh, you thought about this? Have you done this? Have you done it this way? Oh, you could do this. You could mention that. And I've done my own sort of video reviews and game reviews, and I've played games that people have asked me to play and all sorts of stuff. But when people are reminiscing and saying about Pac-Man or something like that, they'll mention this other channel, and I'll go, why is that channel always mentioned? Why? I've done that. You know what I mean? So it's just silly, really. You say, great to see you picked Train to Busan box set up. I look forward to hear what you think of Train to Busan. Particularly, I would suggest you watch the films as and when they were released. So Train to Busan, Seoul Station, Peninsula, Seoul Station is definitely worth watching, and expands on how the zombie virus comes about. Yes, good idea. Don't go directly to the one that's critically acclaimed. I think that's the middle one that's called Train to Busan. Watch them in order, or watch them in the order that you suggest. And of course, my friend has already mentioned that there's another one that's not part of the series, but done by the same director and cinematographer. So I'm going to look into that as well. Absolutely fantastic. You haven't ended it with a goodbye or anything, but that's not a problem. If you're not already, I'm a champion of Muckman Movies. What a channel he's got. He does community questions, his pickups, talks about films specifically, does movie reviews at the cinema. Such a passion, such a knowledge, especially about foreign films. But that doesn't take away, he does the standard English ones as well, the English language ones, and from America and Britain and so forth. So yeah, go over, have a little look. Absolutely fantastic. Salute, my friend. As always, description. We get on to Martroid. My friend Martroid has put, hi Bell, another great blog as usual, another great diary, should I say, as usual. Thank you very much. You mentioned some of the comic book artists whose work you enjoy, and it got me wondering, aside from comic book artists, are there any classic painters or other visual artists whose work interests or inspires you? I've always been drawn to surrealist artists such as Salvador Dali. I know the one, yeah. Rene, I'll tell you, I'm going to destroy these names. Magritte, as well as artists like H.R. Giger. I'd be interested to hear if you have any favourites outside the world of comics. Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely. There's a guy called Frank Harmon. Now, most people might not know this, but as a kid, I was drawn to the Ladybird books. If anybody knows, the Ladybird books were preschool and school books, which talked about your favourite fables like Sleeping Beauty and that. But they did history as well, and they did all sorts of other stuff. Not just history, they did about rural life, living in the countryside, all of this sort of stuff. Frank Harmon and John Kenny, if I remember rightly, were all part of that Lady Book stuff. And a lot of people, when they review the Ladybird books, will mention about the artistry. I learnt about those at a later date, when the internet came along. But I do remember going to the library and being told about those two names. So it's not all about that. And then, of course, you've got Bernie Wrightson. I wish I could show you. I think it's in one of my trading card books. I got a set of Bernie Wrightson cards. He used to draw all sorts of stuff, but mostly on anatomy. But he used to draw zombies and monsters from movies, and obviously the comic book stuff as well. But he was more the zombies and aging dead and Dracula and monsters. Absolutely fantastic artwork. And I wish I could remember the name. I'm trying to think. I think it was Mike something or other. But I used to love the artwork on Airfix boxes and Dinky toys. Yeah, you'd have a picture of what the Airfix kit, this jet in the sky, or this tank from World War II, but I remember that name comes to Mike. What was his name? Mike Tam or something. He did the model kit of the lunar lander from when we landed on the moon. And I purposely looked up his name because this was, later on, early on of the internet, because I didn't know what it was, and I haven't got the kit anymore. Long since destroyed. So yeah, that rings bell. Thank you so much. Fantastic, Martroid. And we've got to the end of the comments bar one. It's Robert's Retro Gaming. So last but not least, and what a fantastic channel he's got. Canadian royalty. I've said it many times before. Every day there's something on his channel, mostly game related. He has done a couple of shout outs and names and all that sort of stuff. But it is early computers and consoles, but sometimes as well stuff in the arcade, Pac-Man and that sort of stuff. So what's he put? Just bear with me. You may not, it's got first comment. Woo! I've been waiting for your blog to drop. Yeah, very difficult these days. I mentioned it before to Sandra, that the blog is dropping when I can, because I'm looking after my mum. When this finishes, I've got to take a few photos, got to get the text right, got to all that sort of stuff, upload it. It's then got to go for its checks. By the time that's happened, my sister is gone. I'm with my mum. I'll watch something on TV with her, get her a cup of tea, get her a dinner ready, do that. All of that sort of stuff means it can be a bit late. Depends on how late in the afternoon this blog is being recorded, to be quite honest. But you may not be aware that foreign students pay a very large fee differentially compared to domestic students. Most places in the world, UK included, as Oxford, for example, it is 4 to 6 times as much as domestic student. I think they can therefore do what they want with regard to leaving the country, especially when they may or may not be welcomed to take employment and immigrate. But what I will know about that, and it's been mentioned in the charter for it, is that universities have a percentage of who they're going to bring in regards to coming across the pond to us. That's a truth. It's like anything. You won't have 100%, and that university therefore is closed down to just foreign students. You're quite right about there's no tie down. That's what the whole discussion was about anyway, if I remember rightly. You've then continued. Immigration has become very difficult for foreign students. I don't
I don't know how it works in the UK. I know this because this is the area my wife works in at our local university. Yeah, and I must admit, when I hear about the words Harvard and all that sort of stuff, I have no idea. All I know is that we have the Oxford-Cambridge boat race. We have Oxford University, Cambridge University. I took some classes within Oxford University, so I know about the grounds. Inspector Morse is set in Oxford, so you see the university grounds all the time. YouTube is full of drones going over Oxford University. They've all got names. When you go into history, you'll find that Cambridge, I think, was the first university, but it was Oxford that had all of the teaching before Cambridge went. That goes back to the 10th or 9th and 8th centuries. 11th century, I think, so it's the earliest recorded is Oxford. But when it comes to your area, I'm never going to question it, no. And anything I've just mentioned before is what I know or what I've been told, and that information could be false from what I've been told or what I read. You know, things like Wiki is not always where I go, and some things are from memory, so you know. But I do listen to an awful lot of Radio 5, and they do bring up the PMQs, Prime Minister's questions, and they do bring up university loans. And so they bring up how the university system works in them PMQs, because they shout it out as an argument, you know, and loans especially. But anyway, that's collectively, the loans part is part of you're a British national. Anyway, it's so nice that your mum has been singing along with Roy Orbison. Yes, she does. And it always brings a big smile to my face. Had to stop buying comics at least 24 years ago because of the financial realities of raising 3 children. Yeah, I can understand it. It was a difficult choice to have to make, so I can empathize. I haven't bought that many in the last couple of decades, and most of the ones I have bought have been digital. Not quite the same as holding the book in your hand, but not bad on a fair-sized tablet. And yeah, I mean, there's other methods. You've got also the Epic line paperbacks. You've got them in black and white for cheapness, colour for the bit more expensive. You've got omnibuses, which I'm big into, but I still collect the comics. And I do know about the digital. Like I said, we talked about CBZ and all of that sort of stuff, and I was part of the Digital Comic Preservation, DCP, and all of that. It's not the same as in a book. It's not I mean, a tablet is fine, I suppose. I don't know. I'm not a snob. It's the storage of it and collecting it and all of that sort of stuff. It's much easier in the books, I find. I'll take the flat cap under advisement. I have a cousin who wears one, and I think it's okay on him. The family will view me as a copycat, but I don't think I care much about that. It's a done deal. Next time I see you, flat cap. Don't care if you've got one. It'll just go in your collection. And that's the end of the comments and shout outs. Thank you so much. Like I say, it always brings back such memories with the comments and the stuff. It's nice to listen to what's going on in your life. It's nice to remember with you stuff. I am going to mention one thing. My friend Steve, I'm sure he wrote one. I don't know exactly what it said, but because it came up, I wanted to remember the question. And the question one was, and it's, by the way, this is Steve Still Plays Games. What was the last big box game you bought for your PC? Which is a very interesting question, because most big boxes went away and turned into the smaller, thinner boxes. And the large version of those big boxes, the last one I bought was Command & Conquer the Anniversary set, which was a thick box. But it wasn't a big box. He's talking about the big boxes. Now, so because you know big boxes turn to those, there is a last big box that I would have bought, but I'm not quite sure which one it was. We're talking about the era
where I was buying big boxes because of the big manuals in them. And I've already mentioned that I've got the big box version of Falcon 4. But I also had the big box version of TFX, which I bought at the same time as Incoming. And those were quite late in the day. I remember those. They weren't Microprose. I can't remember what the last big box Microprose game was, but it was for the PC. It could have been Gunship. Not sure. But I bought big box versions of Black and White, the Lord of the Rings strategy game, plus Age of Empires. All of those I bought big boxes for. In fact, I've shown big box versions of PC stuff in a very, very early blog. It would have been in the first year, in the first 20 episodes. So within the first 20. Might be worth having a look, but yeah, I've mentioned some titles there. I think just edging on the logistics of it all, it would have been a real-time strategy that the big box would have been. I don't think it would have been a utility, even though I bought how to make internet kits. I bought Microsoft encyclopedias of films that we used to have. Bought a big box version of that. I bought my Windows operating systems, which were in big boxes. But the last one came in small boxes like this. That's what you get now. Which come on USB sticks. So I don't remember buying a big box version of Office. I think my last Office that I got was given to me by work when our company went under. I think it was Office 12. Don't know the net. I'm not sure of the numbering now, because it turned into years, like Office 2012 or something like that. In fact, actually, that's probably what it's called. So anyway, I think that sort of like ends that discussion a little way. The big box version, yeah. Sorry, Steve, that everything has happened, but you're always in my brain. You're a good friend. I watch your channel. Please, his description is always in my details. In fact, I've done that details and expanded it for years and years and years. And Steve has always been mentioned in there, along with a lot of my other friends. Mainmeister, all sorts. So, you know, the description is a very important area to look at. And I need to get another water, so I will need to pause just while I get another water. And I'll be back and we'll be finishing this off. And I'm back. And I've got my water filled. And well, I suppose we get to a section that I think is quite collaborative, but probably people tail off at this point, and that is what I've watched on YouTube. I watch a lot on YouTube because, to be quite honest, all my friends are on there and I like to see what they're doing. But it's a massive amount of information that I can gather. I mean, I learned about those slide sheets for my mum and all of that sort of stuff on there. And of course, you know, anything that's going on in TV and movie land and game land. And of course, they're 20-minute bites, you know, 10, 15, 20-minute bites, compared to a film that would be an hour and a half plus. So, yeah, I do watch an awful lot. But I'll continue anyway, because even though people tail off at this point, I think it's a good section. There's 4 that I watched on YouTube, and that is This Week in Retro, Techmoan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. This Week in Retro, the 3 main ones were Checkmate, Checkout, Teletext Adaption Society, and Holy Clickbait Batman. They were the Holy Clickbait Batman I already knew about, but they are interesting.
It's very good. The team on that channel are absolutely fantastic. Obviously, some of my friends have been to the cave where it's all originated from. So I watch it. It's great. Techmoan is because of all the hi-fi equipment and cinema equipment and all of that sort of stuff. Pitfalls of buying them. Goes into hi-fi equipment an awful lot. He did one today. On Saturday. I'll talk about that in a moment. And of course, he started off with car dash cams, which is when I discovered him. I think he did stuff before then, but he did the Ever Solo Play CD. Now, this is a device that's a CD player, but it also rips and does all of that lovely stuff, and it's touchscreen, and it's internet radio and everything, right? Bloody expensive, but is that something I'd wish list? Absolutely. I know exactly where it would go, just down there, underneath that plinth. It's got an amp in it as well, so it can have its separate speakers. It does have a connectability issue in regards to outputs. So a little bit about that. But that was a great. And then he did another one in the week because he didn't do one on Saturday. It was called Switchbot Weather Station. Now, this is one of those paper white, very thin devices that tell you the weather that you stick on the fridge or something. His one is now not connecting to his internet. So he bought another one, and he talked about the pitfalls of that one that he's got and the one that's now not really working that well. So that was a great show. Loved that. Gadget Show. I'm not criticizing Gadget Show because everything there's always something in there, but it always seems to be Apple orientated a lot. So anyway, this week was what Apple was really showing us at WWDC, OCDC, can't quite remember. It was a worldwide Apple reveal, and they talked about VR and all that sort of stuff. It was the glasses, and there was some other stuff in there. But, I must admit, some of the stuff has been tech from 20 years ago, which they did in a bigger one. It's almost like doing a short. It's regurgitating stuff they've done before, and therefore I'm skipping a lot. And I may be therefore skipping bits that I shouldn't want to skip because they've been added in. But it's just, I know it's the same thing. So, yeah. And chronologically gaming, I'm not losing faith in him, but he's still in 1982. We've moved past December, which you'd think, well, that would be the end. But it's going over stuff that he's found out was earlier in the year. And he gave the number 2 weeks ago that was 500 games. It's going to take him quite a few weeks to get past that point. This week's game of centralization was Astro Navigator for the BBC Micro. It was very interesting. I hadn't seen that game before, so that was good. But there was many other games, and I must admit he's going quite quick. So I think he did about 10, 15 in that show of 500. So you can imagine it's still going to take some time. But I'm so looking forward to 1983 now. That's all I can say about it. What else did I watch? The British Independent Film YouTube channel. There is another word, but it's British Independent Film Audit or something. But just type in British Independent Film, it'll come up. They had Peter Capaldi on. It was called Peter Capaldi Talks, and it went over where he started as an artist. That's a graphic artist. All the little bits that he used to do for the BBC, because he was working for BBC Scotland. Getting an Oscar for his first animation. Going from that to doing commercials for dog food, believe it or not. And his time on Doctor Who and other shows like The Thick of It and the rest. So that was good. I really, really enjoyed my time. It was about 50 minutes long. Brilliant. I then watched Retro Hour. This was a live repeat stream where it showed off the A1200 in action, which is the big version of the Amiga
that's coming out in December. It's been delayed. The only bad side that I will say about that is they said they'd like to see the operating system rather than the carousel system that the Amiga is obviously going to have. But the reason for the delay is the operating system. So why are they going to show that? I just didn't get that in the live stream, but there you go. That might be just me. But it was still great to watch. Wild Culture is a channel, but I saw this amongst many, many others. And they were all talking about the cancellation of the Christmas special of Doctor Who and cancellation of Doctor Who in general. Okay. And what you have to understand about that is it was, I think, obvious it was going to happen. Doctor Who is on hiatus, and I've been here before. I mean, I'm old enough to know about the big, long period of time between 1998, was it? Something like that. And 2005 when it came back, and just the one movie and a lot of comics and books and audio works that you could get in between. I think it's the charter that's going to be causing the problem, and so I don't see it coming back for 2 years. That's just my opinion. Do realise that I know nothing other than what I've been listening to, and some of them have been overjoyed, some of them have come across like don't shoot the messenger, and they're walking sometimes a very tight line not to offend anyone. It is what it is. I've been here before. I'm not worried about it. Next thing I saw was LGR. This might be an old video. I didn't look and see that this was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or whether it was this week. But it was about Bryce 3D. And anybody that knows me knows I used to do ray tracing, and Bryce 3D, it was ray tracing. Only I did my ray tracing on the Amiga, and the only thing I did on my PC, when I first got my very first PC, which was an SX25, was by a fractal generator. And Bryce 3D was the PC version of ray tracing that I used to do on the Amiga, and I didn't have the money for 3D Max. So it was interesting to look at Bryce 3D, and it made me think that, was Bryce 3D 7 the last version of Bryce 3D? Can you still get it? Does it work on our Windows now? What other programs are there to do ray tracing in that's free? And it didn't really go into that much depth. It went over just Bryce 3D up to version 7. And he was showing it off on an old PC build that he's got, because everything he does, he tries to do in the year that the program came out. And this one just happened to be Win95. So, yeah, I might have to do some study and find out what ray tracing is done like on the PC now, because I might like to get back into it just as a tinkering thing. And then I watched the movie Buddy. That was the panel at the FYC in America for Spider-Man Noir, and it was a question and answers panel. So that was very, very fun, because I'm just watching it at the moment. So that's probably why it's come up in my stream, of information. We move on, therefore, to Film TV and Soundtrack YouTube. At the very top, we've got my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, and I'll mention it again. What a great channel. Go and have a look, subscribe and stuff. But this is the stuff he's done this week, guys. Look, you got top 5 action films, top 5 action and adventure films, 1948 to 1954. Doctor Who reviews of The Evil of the Daleks, still doing Patrick Troughton. X-Files review, Season 6, Episode 15. What I Have Watched, Episode 22. Very, very interesting. And he did a live with me. Episode 111. So, wow, we've done 111 weeks. Wow, man. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I have a ball every time I come on. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Moving on, we've got Movie Collectors. Oh, salute, by the way. Movie Collector he did an unboxing of 17 top laser discs, which have been gifted to him. And of course,
Laserdiscs is one of my things. I've still got a Laserdisc player and I've still got Laserdisc. So, of course, I'm going to watch that. Absolutely marvellous. A great half hour for me to watch. Less than that, I think it was. But that was brilliant. Just Joshings, I'm not sure he's done anything this week. I had a look. I looked at the shorts. I looked at the live. He does movie reviews. Nice guy. But I didn't see anything this week. So I put a question mark next to that. But I'll still mention him because he's one that I go to. Mondo Chelevic Movies is another one I go to. He did a 4K and Blu-ray pickups for the 10th of June, which was 4 days ago. Mostly from HMV. But absolutely fantastic. It tells you what's out at the moment and probably some things to consider when it comes to older movies that might be just released or just on the shelves. Then you've got Blu-ray movies. Do you remember I said it was a play on names? Blu-ray, Blu-ray. Came across him because of Ian. He did my top 10 1960s movies plus, movie what I've watched type things that Ian Hill's doing. So that was quite good. It's always nice to know what people are watching and have a think and say, oh, whether I've watched that or not, and whether you want to watch it. It's all those sort of questions that go through your head. Moving to Muckman movies, and I mentioned him before, Jamie, he actually left a comment before. He did his Sheffield HorrorCon 2006 walk around and convention video. Absolutely brilliant. I never went to it, so it's great, and I could see what my friend Jamie and forgotten his name now. It'll come back to me. I do apologise, but yeah, can't quite remember. Why is it that happens to me? Not quite sure. Anyway, Martroyd went to that event, showed me a picture, and it was just great putting that picture to good use in regards to that convention. It was just brilliant. We moved to David Mansell, who did films I would recommend. That's really quite good, isn't it? Giving your time and saying, look, you might want to consider this as a film to watch because it's a film in my collection that I find is great, and it's a film that you might enjoy. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And then we get to the Commode section, which is Commode on film and Commode and Mayo's take. Commode on film is more a podcast, which talks mostly about a specific film and its traits. Yeah, that's the best way of describing it. But he also did. The episode was called "This Is Why YouTubers Beat Star Wars at the Box Office." It was Star Wars related, this one. But Commode and Mayo's take is different. That's a movie review channel, and they reviewed Boogie Nights, Disclosure Day, Rise and Fail of Sir Dovius Weatherfield. That one was interesting. I can't quite remember what it was. A documentary about a bloke, but I can't quite remember what he did. Well, the words aren't coming to mind anyway. So that's everything on film, TV, and soundtracks. And for every single one of those, thank you very much and salute. And we moved on to gaming and tech YouTube, which is the last section. And by the way, I do apologise that you heard the bell just now. That's just because stuff is coming through and it could be about my mum. So I might have to recheck it in a moment. The other phone switched off, by the way. So I'll have a quick look and see if it's anything that's important. No, nothing important. In fact, one of them is from Ian. It's about Thursday. So we moved to gaming and tech YouTube. And it's the very first three of them are religiously watched.
usually because there's something stuff all the time coming out. That's the first one is Down the Rabbit Hole. He did a video on Street Fighter, the 1994 movie, not as bad as feared. That's because that film does have a sort of religious aspect of, oh my God, how bad is this? So he didn't watch it the first time because of Jean-Claude Van Damme, so I recognise that. He also did the Vectrex fencing simulator, is confusing to MC. And I get that. I'm looking forward to my Vectrex Mini. But yeah, the Vectrex was a weird system where they did vector graphic lines for games, but they did them because it was a Vectrex system. They could do it any way they want now. But there you go. But Robert's Retro Gaming, here we go. Look what he's done. Jesus Christ. Look, it takes up that whole section at the top. He's done Dwarf Fortress Classic episode 42. Minecraft Play episode 197. Jesus, going on that long? Pico 8 gameplay of Crowded Dungeon Crawler. Spectrum gameplay of Pinball. And I can't see the rest, so I'd have to open up the channel to find out what was there. But just trying to think. Just bear with me a moment. I do apologise. And I'm back. Continuing on from what Robert's done, he's done Spectrum gameplay of Pinball, Atari 2600 gameplay of skiing, and Atari 8-bit, which was The Race, Skywriter, Spider Quake, and Blinky's Scary Scandal. Of all of those, I loved every single one of them. Skywriter I'd seen on Steve's channel, but all the others were all brand new to me, mostly, really. So I enjoyed my time looking at Robert's channel this week. Then we go to Steve Still Play Games. He did a couple of videos this week. He did Fuse Unofficial Game Jam, which I've mentioned about Fuse last week. It's the programming language for the Switch. He showed off a load of games on there. Specky Saga, which was a Spectrum game. C64. Traps and Gemstones Spelunky, Commodore 64, which is a homebrew game, which I really, really liked looking at. And in the arcade, he talked about games that I've never put 10 pence in. You know, that's what we used to do to play our arcade games. And 2 coins was 2 10-pence pieces before they were adapted for 20-pence coins in particular. Salute, my friend, absolutely fantastic. And then you've got 20th Century Gaming, who did he did a video called C64 live stream announcement. I think we all know what that announcement is if you've been coming to the coming to the end of the character. There's only 3 more to go. I don't know if I've mentioned this one. So 20th Century Gaming C64 incoming live storm announcement. That's a community thing for voting for games that you want him to play that are also sizzlers in Zap. You've got Colin Jones, aka Pondo, who did a vlog of blog number 105. Everyone's C64 challenge of Dino eggs. Main Crypta talks a little bit how to get to the next not level, the next tier in your mastery. And the last one is Mainmeister himself. Oh, by the way, he did a PCB unboxing as well, Colin did, so salute to him. Sunday live stream he's going to do tonight, but on yesterday he did a C64 mind-blowing demo. And I really liked that demo. It was really good. It's nice looking to see what the C64 could have done, but didn't, because the programmers didn't know everything and didn't participate with everyone. So that's the end of this particular blog, other than what I bought this week. So I'll go to overhead cam. There we are. And you've got one battle after another. Not quite sure if I showed that last week, but it's a nice steelbook. Really enjoyed that. There's the aforementioned Train to Busan trilogy, which I'm going to get round to doing. There's the 3 films. And there's a specific order that I should be watching those in. My friend Denny told me about something called Space Theatre, because of the next Pace Theatre is going to feature Captain Scarlet. I bought therefore the Space 1999 Space Theatre Volume 2 on eBay for a very, very cheap price. So that was get that. And of course the last big one was Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which I loved as a film. It was again in black and white, but that would be nice to watch again. And just bear with me. So we'll go to new camera. Something on the screen I couldn't change. There we go. Got it. So that's the end of the blog. I hope you enjoyed your time on here. Sorry it went a bit slow at the end. I was thinking and doing all sorts of stuff. There was a knock at the door. But don't worry too much. Please have a great week. I'm hoping to be back next week with some information on my first holiday. So, back to work, should I say, after being sick. So, all the best to you, everybody, and thank you so much for watching. Till next week. Bye-bye. See, getting so tired that I think I pressed the wrong button. But hopefully you saw the overhead cam and all that sort of stuff, and I hope that you enjoyed what you watched. So the blog will be still out next week. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please tell your friends, and salute to everybody. You're all in my thoughts, and I hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.